So there's this channel called Shonen Showdown, and they are an anime channel that does videos on, well, as the name suggests, shonen anime. What is odd to me though, they do a certain amount of videos on Code Geass, not specifically on it, like compared to say something like my channel, but they do videos where they'll throw Code Geass on there, like in quick lists or in simple versus battles, which is what they're famous for. I mean, it's called Shonen Showdown. However, I do find it weird they talk about Code Geass since Code Geass isn't a shonen anime, and I'm not going to go into the specifics as to why that is. I've already discussed it in other videos on my channel, but just take my word on this. As someone who's done a lot of research on this particular topic, Code Geass is not a shonen anime, so people who put these lists together or these challenges containing certain best shonen characters shouldn't be putting Lelouch on these lists because Code Geass is not a shonen anime. And again, I've discussed this in previous videos. I'm not going to go through that here. Now, before I begin this discussion on Shonen Showdown and why I'm specifically not happy with the channel, I want it to be clear that this is a discussion out of love and not hate. I enjoy this channel. I've been following it since they were shown on Roberto Blake's YouTube review, where he was taking certain channels who paid a certain fee and went over them. That's how long I've known Shonen Showdown for. That was a couple years ago, I believe. And these guys are very passionate anime fans. You can tell that from the quality of the content they produce on an ongoing basis and the passion they bring in each video. For some reason though, when it comes to Code Geass, every take they have on it is usually not good. Now, there are good parts within their videos discussing Code Geass, but generally speaking, the majority of it is not good. This is not about me disagreeing with their opinions on Code Geass. Everyone has certain takes on the series, and that's fine. My issues with them is that they're not just opinions I don't agree with, but rather it's how they came to those opinions, where they are misrepresenting the story, getting the narrative wrong, and their conclusions based on that incorrect understanding is why the opinions are invalid when they discuss Code Geass. And this is why I don't like DX's video, because it's based on getting the story of Code Geass incorrect to push a narrative which is not accurate. And Shonen Showdown is doing the same thing. Now granted, they're not doing it to make Code Geass look bad or to say they hate the story. In fact, most of their videos are out of love, but I'm still annoyed with it because the takes they have are not accurate, and that's the frustrating part. And I don't know why that's the case. I have some theories, but again, they're just theories. I'm not going to put words in these guys' mouths. They can defend themselves and explain why this happens, but here are some theories that I came up with. A couple are they haven't watched Code Geass in a while, so they're just winging it based on their past understanding of the story. Maybe they watched the show a couple months ago, a couple years ago, who knows? Maybe they don't understand the story, or maybe they're not even prepping and they're just winging it from what they remember, which is kind of like number one, but at least number one's like, we kind of watch a show and based on that, I'm going to do a little bit of research and not really look back into stuff, or maybe they're not doing any research and they're just winging it. And based on some of the videos I've seen, winging it seems like the right answer. Now, originally I wasn't even going to make a video discussing Shonen Showdown, but they made a new video that came out this week discussing the best brothers in shonen anime, I believe, or his favorite brothers. I'm not sure if it was shonen or not. What angered me about that video was he had a take on Code Geass, and it was just wrong. It illuminated every single complaint that I have about this channel and their consistently strange and inaccurate takes on Code Geass. So we're going to go through that video and why it's not correct. But before I do, I want to go through other videos they've made in the past to again show this not like a one and done type of situation or an outlier. This is the constant when it comes to this channel. The first video we're going to go over is the top leaders in shonen anime, which is odd to me because Code Geass is not a shonen anime. But so let's get into the video. Okay, so here is his top 10 list on the, I think it's top 5 actually, of the best leaders in shonen anime. And I got to the end where he discusses Lelouch. Here are his takes on it, and we're going to go over it after that.
Lelouch v. Britannia, aka Zero, at number 1 of one of the best leaders I have ever seen in any anime, period. Why? Because you gotta talk about the cards already stacked against him, right? You already have the king of, V Britannia. You already have, Charlie doing his thing. You already have V2. You have all these cards stacked against you. And Lelouch found a way to make sure that the 11s have a shot. The Japanese have a shot against Britannia. Not only did he recruit Kallen, who's one of the best fighters in the series, if not the best, next to Suzaku, you have C2 backing you up, protecting you, making sure you have opportunities to go save Nunnally, making sure you have opportunities to get things done. And Zero, not only has he developed the Black Knights, he made sure that his only enemy, that was Suzaku, ended up playing the role as Zero post his quote-unquote death. Listen, Zero is none other than an elite leader, and I haven't.
Okay, let's go over those points one after the other. The first thing he mentioned was the cards are stacked against him. He had to deal with Charles, V2, but he still gave the Japanese people a chance to fight against Britannia. A couple things here. Number one, V2 has nothing to do with this. That's more of a conflict between the Geass Order and Lelouch that has nothing to do with helping the Japanese people out. I will admit his ability to defeat V2 shows that he is a good protagonist and a one who is also durable and has accomplished a lot. But that in of itself has nothing to do with Japan and has nothing to do with his leadership ability. Now, giving the Japanese people a chance to win, again, has nothing to do with his leadership ability. What I think you're referring to, and again, you could always respond to what you meant, but if you're discussing his ability to come up with strategies to help them win in combat, that in of itself has nothing to do with good leadership. You could have someone who's in charge but is not good at tactics and strategy, rather just knows who the right people are to give such strategy and tactics for a given battle. So a good leader could be in that area, but just because you can come up with good tactics to give people a chance, that doesn't mean you're necessarily a leader. Now, I'll give you the pass if what you meant was Lelouch founded the Black Knights, and through his leadership in the Black Knights, they had a good chance against Britannia. If that's what you meant, then yes, that's accurate, but it wasn't clear, and you can tell just from my ambiguity interpreting your statement that I don't know what you meant. You then mentioned that Lelouch recruited Kallen, who's one of the best Nightmare Frame pilots in Code Geass, which is accurate. There's a couple things though that are not accurate about that statement. Number one, he didn't actually recruit Kallen. He recruited technically all the terrorists. I wouldn't even call that recruitment since there was no organization. Lelouch merely joined forces with people, but again, that's semantics and how you want to interpret the difference between recruiting and joining up with. But they said in the show you're joining up with us, not you're recruiting us. So just to use the show's own words, it wasn't technically recruitment. Also, Lelouch didn't know she was the best Nightmare Frame pilot at the time when they first were working together. So you're using after information to determine information that happened in the past, which is not really a good way to do things. The next thing you mentioned was that C2 was backing up Lelouch. That has nothing to do with his leadership abilities at all. That is just C2 being with Lelouch until he honors her contract and fulfills it. That has nothing to do with leadership. That's just the two of them being loyal as friends, and before that as accomplices. That has nothing to do with leadership. You mentioned the whole thing about helping out Nunnally and stuff. Again, those are all true things to an extent, but has nothing to do with his leadership abilities and why he is a good leader. You mentioned the whole thing about becoming Zero. Again, that's nothing to do with his leadership abilities. That's just one of his plans coming into fruition. When I think about a leader and everything Lelouch has done as a good leader, getting Suzaku to become Zero was more of a good example of interpersonal intelligence, which good leaders have, but in and of itself doesn't make you a good leader. So I don't necessarily like the way you worded that. I'm gonna be really generous here and tell you the exact reason of why Lelouch is a good leader and what you could have said that was more supported by the narrative and outright stated if you had actually watched the show, which you claim you did, and I'll take your word for it, but I think it's been a long time because the show has made it very apparent as to why Lelouch is a good leader. It's been stated by multiple people in the story itself, including D-Tard Reed, so that's why I'm a little confused with the whole we watched the show before, but then you get something like this which is stated outright many times incorrect. The reason why Lelouch is such a good leader is because he has good interpersonal intelligence, and he's able to use that to get people from different backgrounds to work together. That's what D-Tard Reed was saying. Lelouch gives results, and that unites everyone together. Lelouch is a charismatic leader. He's able to motivate people to work with him, to fight with him. Good leaders can do that sort of thing, and that's what Lelouch does. Detard makes that point several times in the anime. Lelouch is a good tactician because he's able to look at an entire battlefield, but the point that needs to be stated here is that he's not just able to look at this battlefield and say, okay, we'll have to do X, A, B, C, or X, Y, and Z to solve the problem. He can do that, but also he knows who to put to solve the problem. A good leader can put people in positions to succeed, and that's what Lelouch does throughout his time in charge of the Black Knights and when he was Emperor of Britannia, and that's really why he is such a good leader. The other things you mentioned are not entirely false, even the narrative itself, but if you're going to talk about Lelouch's leadership skills, you gotta break it down to nitty gritty and discuss his ability to motivate others, to work with him, to unite people of different backgrounds, and to put people in a position to succeed. That's why he's a good leader. My problem with this video is not that you're supporting Lelouch and saying he's a good leader. My problem is your reasonings behind it and how they seem very simplistic and not something that someone who actually understood the character would state. Rather, someone who hasn't watched in a while and is going off memory, which is what it looked like you were doing here. This video got like, I think 5,000 views, maybe a little more than that, and rightfully so. It wasn't that great. And I love your content, okay? But like, this video was bad. It looked like you were winging it the whole way through. But let's go on to the next video, which is a top protagonist in anime. This one came out a little more recently, but still we're going to see some issues with the take about Lelouch. Okay, here is his take on Lelouch as a top protagonist on his list. So let's listen in and see what he has to say.
I actually went with Lelouch v Britannia from Code Geass. And this one was crazy because I actually wanted to put Lelouch higher. But this is how potent my list is. Upon receiving the Geass power from C2, anybody getting that power could have went the wrong way. The Geass power giving you the power to control somebody by giving them a command. I mean, think about the kind of evil you can do with that. Lelouch decided to use that power to overthrow Britannia, which is not only an evil empire that's trying to get rid of Area 11 and all the Japanese that were in there, but it actually was his father and his whole family running the operation. Only Lelouch and Nunnally were casted away from that because they did not agree with what was going on. But again, none of that mattered. Lelouch decided to become the unsung hero, change his name to Zero, recruit the Black Knights, and now he's going up against the entire Britannia Empire, who actually happens to have Suzaku, who is his childhood friend, locked in to fight against him. And the fact that he was able to accomplish that by sacrificing himself in order to make the world come together is different. At number 5.
Okay, not everything he stated there was incorrect, but let's go through the parts that were. The first one he mentioned was anyone with Geass power could have used it incorrectly for evil purposes. Now, when he first discussed this, I was thinking, okay, you got a point there, because anyone could take a Geass ability they receive and use it the wrong way. However, he failed on this when he mentioned that anyone could have used the ability to command someone to do whatever they wanted, basically Lelouch's powers. What he fails to recognize is that Geass changes from person to, or varies from person to person. It's not like the Death Note where it works the same no matter who's using it. Geass power changes from person to person. So if someone else got Geass from C2, it wouldn't be the same as Lelouch's. I do agree with the point that Lelouch used his power for good. I'm just annoyed that he made an obvious mistake about categorizing Lelouch's Geass as something that someone else could have gotten when that's not how it worked. They might have gotten something similar, but not the same thing. Because again, that's not how Geass works. That's a small little nitpick, but it just kind of bothered me. The next thing he mentioned is not a small one. This is a big problem. Britannia was trying to get rid of the Japanese and the 11s. No, they were not trying to get rid of them at all. Lelouch stated to Kallen they wanted the Japanese people to assimilate and become honorary Britannians. And by doing that, they could be the same as regular Britannians. Now, obviously, there's still going to be some people who are racist towards them, but it's definitely the right direction to get them to the same level of the Britannians. There was never any plan to systematically kill them in a form of a genocide at all that I know of in the story. There were a couple of genocides against them, but that was never part of the plan, and those were actions that were taken that I'm pretty sure were criticized by everybody as being something really stupid. Now, the reason why I don't like this point is because it indicates to me you didn't watch the show, because in the show it stated that their whole goal with Japan was to get them to become a satellite nation, to make them more productive, to helping out the empire. Eventually, once the rebellion was completely removed, Zero's rebellion and also the groups that were still resisting like Kyoto, Yuffie was going to become in charge as the viceroy to lead Japan to the next era of their life, whatever that was going to be, and obviously he's not Japan Area 11. The point I'm trying to make though is there was never any discussion about killing the Japanese. Plan was to elevate them as a satellite nation. Now the other thing you mentioned too was how Lelouch and Nully were the only ones who were casted away because they didn't agree with what's going on. Technically, Yuffie didn't agree either. Again, if you'd watched the show, you would know that. And I hate to keep saying that if you'd watched the show, but these takes really indicate that you haven't watched it. Or if you did, it's been a long time, because that was kind of an important point. Yuffie kept trying to help the Japanese people. She elevated Suzaku to become a knight of Britannia. She fought against her sister multiple times on things she was doing. And her plan to make the SAS was very controversial within her own family. So if we're going to be accurate here, it was Lelouch and Nelly and Yuffie who didn't agree with what Britannia was doing. Now, if we were to go further with this, it's not even accurate that Lelouch, Nelly, and Yuffie were against what Britannia was doing to Japanese people. Because when Lelouch went to Japan when he was exiled, he was talking to Suzaku about how even though Japan was being conquered by Britannia, Japan isn't exactly better themselves, implying that he's not saying that them conquering Japan is a bad thing. He's saying both nations are equally evil, which is a different take than what you are suggesting here. Nully, as far as I know, didn't give any opinion on what Britannia was doing, but she did support the Special Administrative Zone of Japan in R2, so I can assume that she in fact probably was not okay with what they were doing to Japanese people. Now the thing about Lelouch talking to Suzaku about, again, Japan and Britannia both being equal when they were children, that was a picture trauma. Now that might be reaching for some people, but if you're going to discuss a character in a story, you have to do your research on every aspect of the story. And if you don't intend on doing that, then at least state in the video this is only based on the original series and nothing else, because otherwise you're doing your audience a disservice by not giving them the complete picture of whatever you were talking about, which is probably why you came to this conclusion in the first place. Even though Lelouch, again, wasn't really that against Britannia destroying Japan, so the more you look at it, there isn't much proof that Lelouch was specifically against what Britannia was doing to Japan. Now, he was against their entire philosophy as a whole, which was the strong destroy the weak. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's inequality isn't wrong. Equality is. That's the Britannian way. He wasn't okay with that because Nully would cast it off. It had nothing to do with Japan, because as you said in a different video, everything that Lelouch did was for Nully, not Japan. So if you want to say that Lelouch and Nully were casted away because they didn't agree with the Britannian philosophy, then that's a good point. But I don't think it's what you were saying. I think you were implying that it was their treatment toward 11, or the fact that Britannia was conquering the whole world, that bothered Lelouch and Nully, and it wasn't. It was simply their whole way of life that pissed him off. Lelouch's initial exile was actually because he decided to give up his right to the throne, and because he antagonized his father about not caring about Marion. Now, the whole Ragnarok connection aspect to the story, he was sent by his father to Japan to protect him from V2. So if you use that interpretation of the story, or not interpretation, if you use that part of the story, then actually Lelouch, it didn't matter what Lelouch thought, he was going to be sent away regardless. So no matter how you look at it, this take is not correct. Let's move on now to the next video where you discuss between Kallen versus C2. And there's a bunch of things wrong in this video. I don't think I'm going to capture all of them, but I'm going to go through the main ones that were really annoying. And I'll be skipping through the video as well, because unlike these past two, which were list based, there's I have to go through a bunch of timestamps to get through it. If I'm chopping through the video, that's why. Okay, now I'm going to go through the video, through each part that has to be discussed. I won't be discussing each point while the video is playing. Rather, we'll just go through each one. Then afterwards, we'll discuss each thing separately.
The answer is none other than Kallen Kozuki. People who have watched Code Geass, unlike him, actually understand why Kallen Kozuki. She's not a bad pilot, but she's not the best pilot, but she gets the job done. But see, I don't know. I think the blunder of her, endangering herself by agreeing to meet up with Mao was a big
thing forcing Lelouch to kind of having to like intervene, and they became closer through that process, but it took her a little while to kind of warm up to Lelouch, and then she lost her memories, and then they had to get her memories back. But she, no doubt, in no way am I saying that she's not elite. She is elite, but when we're talking about Kallen Kozuki, come on, man. First of all, she is the best pilot of the Black Knights.
Okay.
Hands down. If Suzaku came up, he was getting thrashed by Kallen. All right.
That's a fact.
Almost every single time.
Yeah.
Lelouch recognized her skill as the best pilot, which is why he made sure that she always had the most elite nightmare out of everybody. He made sure that hers was ready to go. He made sure that Rakshata was working on it. You know what I'm saying? She had all the most elite technology, elite attack to do more. She was willing to do more. I mean, you're talking about a girl that literally said, I will assassinate Suzaku at this party, pulled out a knife, it was ready to take his life for Zero. This is beyond anything that we've ever even really seen going on through the Ashford Academy and everything else that was going on. I mean, she made the 4 holy swords look like Swiss cheese. She was just finding holes and blasting everybody. She was a complete beast. I like C2, all right? C2 has done a lot.
I'll be with you all day, all week, all year. Kallen is that. She is the most loyal. She's the best pilot in the series, arguably, but I would argue that point. However, Kallen.
But none of that matters though, because you gotta remember, C2 gave him the Geass, right? So a lot of Lelouch, right? So a lot of Lelouch's plans that were calculated through using the Geass power, were of his own doing. C2 was kind of there to make sure that, you know, if there's any bumps in the road, then she would interject. But when we're talking listen, when we're talking about Kallen, I mean, there is nothing that is getting done with the Black Knights without Kallen. There is absolutely nothing. They're not moving. They're not fighting.
That's true.
She led every single operation, okay? And it came to the point that she was so elite that when Lelouch had his whole Zero Requiem plan, you know what I mean, to, you know, be the sacrificial lamb for the betterment of the world, what did we end up seeing? We ended up seeing Suzaku flip-flopping and switching teams because he was like, all right, I need somebody that's at least somewhat reminds me of Kallen's, you know, skill level on the battlefield. And he got Suzaku to fulfill that role and play his part as a Knight of Zero. But when we're talking about Kallen, you can't really replace her. Because even though, you know, there's situations where, you know, Kallen has gotten kidnapped. When Kallen has gotten kidnapped, a lot of the operations literally stopped. Everything was done. And the functions shut down. Lelouch's plans got, you know, thwarted. Like, this is what we're talking about here. When C2 lost her memory, the Black Knights were still moving. Everything was still going along. Everything was still, you know, fine and dandy. He was lost. He was lost without Kallen. Kallen had to come in there and stop him from using a drug. It was like, come on, pull yourself together. I'm here now. Because she's that elite. We gotta remember this, man. We gotta remember this.
Okay, that video, well, the points they made, it was a bunch of rambling nonsense. In all honesty, I don't know, like, oh my god, that, of all the videos they've made, in terms of just coherentness, if that's even a word, this one was hard to really follow what the heck they were talking about. Let's go to the points that I was stopping at during the video. The first thing he mentioned was people who watch Code Geass would pick Kallen over C2. This is asinine. Anyone who can tell you, if you go on the Reddit or Facebook or really any forum where fans are talking about the series, everyone picks C2 over Kallen majority of the time. C2 is like one of the most popular characters in Code Geass other than Lelouch. So to suggest that fans prefer Kallen over C2 is incorrect. It just shows you didn't actually watch the show or you're not interacting with the fans. Either way, I also find it funny you said for those who watch the show, yet most of the takes you guys make on Code Geass show that you didn't. The first incorrect point made was that C2 is an okay pilot. She literally pilots the Gwain, the Burai, and the Akatsuki with really accurate precision and excellent ability. I'm not sure what her synchronous rate was, but she was able to pilot the Gwain after only a couple of days of training, and her and Lelouch were an awesome team. You're talking about who was better for Lelouch in terms of like his partner and helping him out. C2 was literally with him all the time in the Gwain, and those two were a very powerful fighting force within Code Geass. So to suggest she was an okay pilot is very insulting. You know who was an okay pilot? Tamaki. Actually, Tamaki was probably below average. I would say Ogi was an okay pilot. C2 literally mastered 3 different nightmare frames, okay? Even Kallen and Suzaku in all their glory only used 1 or 2 throughout the entire series. C2 used 3 and probably could have used more beyond that. The next thing you got wrong was that C2 went to Mao, which forced Lelouch to intervene. No, that was not the plan at all. You see, C2 went to go to Mao because if she didn't, he would have revealed Lelouch's identity as Zero and got him in trouble. So by going to Mao, she was protecting Lelouch. She also went with the intention to kill Mao, but couldn't do it when given the chance. So Lelouch had to come in there to save her. But if she had followed through with her plans, Lelouch would not have been involved in there to help her out. And also, how is this a fair point when Lelouch had to come and save Kallen, which you conveniently forget? I don't really want to partake in this debate so much, but if we're going to discuss how C2 needed rescuing, well, so did Kallen. So you can cancel them both out and it's not an argument. But either way you look at it, it's still a wrong take. You also mentioned that it took her a while to warm up to Lelouch. Well, Kallen was the same. It also took her a while to warm up to Lelouch. In fact, until near the end of R2, we're talking like turn 17, she had no interest in Lelouch whatsoever. I'm talking Lelouch v Britannia or Lamprey. Now, Zero, she liked him. Did she love him? I don't know. I did a whole video on it, and I didn't come to any conclusion that she truly loved him until the end of the series. There was admiration prior to that. The other thing that's bad about this is that it doesn't really matter when C2 warmed up to Lelouch, which by the way was at the end of R1, which happened way sooner than Kallen. And then you like rush in the idea that she lost her memories and they had to get them back. What does that have to do with the previous point? Losing her memories was a result of trying to protect Lelouch. Again, showing how much she really cares about him and is a good person to have on your side. And they didn't have to go and get back her memories. That wasn't like some kind of side plot in the story. That just happened with Anya approaching her. I mean, it was a side plot, but it had nothing to do with Lelouch. They're also implying Lelouch had to go out of his way to recover her memories, and that's not what happened in the story. That's a terrible take on the whole situation. You then mentioned that every time Kallen fought Suzaku, she thrashed him. No, the record was 2 wins, 2 losses, and 4 draws. Is that a thrashing? That means that of the 8 encounters they had, she only beat him twice. How is that a thrashing? They were actually equal in combat, and Suzaku owned her a lot, even when it was a draw. Again, I politely and respectfully ask, did you really watch the show and analyze it? Because these takes are factually incorrect. We're not even at this point discussing opinions. I mean, I guess a couple opinions, but mostly we're going over facts, right? You know, like if this was like a test and you wrote like an essay describing something, I'm just fact checking what you wrote. I'm not even getting into the whole analytical aspects, which are not even good in and of themselves. You mentioned also that Kallen is elite in hand-to-hand combat. Well, so is C2. She literally fought in the Code Geass version of World War II. There's a scene showing her pin down a guy with her leg when trying to find out where Mao's whereabouts were. C2 is very capable in hand-to-hand combat. Is she the same level as Kallen? Probably not, but to say C2 isn't known for hand-to-hand combat or even the ability to use firearms is crap because, again, she fought in World War II in the Code Geass version. That's not correct, and it's a complete mischaracterization of C2's character. You then said that Kallen was going to do more for Lelouch than C2 was. Are you serious? How can you... I hate to roll my eyes here, but C2 literally did everything Lelouch wanted. He killed Mao. She took out the Geass Order. The people that she served, she went against them. She went against Charles and Marion, the people that she was working with this whole time for the Ragnarok connection. She abandoned everyone and everything for Lelouch. How is that any different than what Kallen was doing, what she abandoned her whole life to support Zero? They both equally gave up everything they had to support Lelouch. I don't know how you can say one did more than the other based on everything they had to give up. So I'm not even saying one did more than the other. I'm saying they were equal in this respect. And you're not arguing it well in your case. You then mentioned that Kallen was going to kill Suzaku for Lelouch as a positive. Did you not watch that episode? He literally stopped her from doing it. He then spoke to Dieter and said, did you send Kallen to do this? And Dieter was like, well, I might have suggested it. And he's like, don't do that without me telling you. He had no interest in killing Suzaku at all, okay? That's a again, did you guys not watch the story? I have to keep saying this like I'm like a broken record if anyone even gets that reference, but that's not accurate to the story. He did not want her to do that. If anything, that makes her not a good person to have on your side. You don't want someone working with you who will go behind your back to do things that you didn't want. So no, that's not a good quality. And if we're gonna talk about people killing someone else for their own benefit or for someone else's benefit, C2 killed Mal for Lelouch. Your point has no value and is incorrect in the story itself.
People who have watched Code Geass, unlike him,
You then mentioned that Kallen made the 4 holy swords look like Swiss cheese. She never fought them in the story, you know that, right? Now, you could have said that she made them inferior because of her own powerful abilities as a Nightmare Frame pilot, but you made it seem like they were actually fighting each other. She never fought the holy swords. She fought the Knights of the Round, and even then, she only fought a couple of them, not all of them. So I don't know what you're talking about there. I believe that between Kallen and Suzaku, they fought the same number. I could be off by 1 or 2 there. So I don't know what you're referring to. Actually, the 4 holy swords were very capable fighters, and even in Kallen's absence, performed well when trying to free China from the High Eunuchs. You then mentioned that Kallen is the most loyal person in Code Geass. The most loyal person to Lelouch was actually Jeremiah, not Kallen. I'm just joking, but well, not Sora. I mean, it's debatable. But between C2 and Kallen, which is what this is about, as I said earlier, they both gave everything for Lelouch, and both at one point or another would do anything for Lelouch. So you can't say one is better than the other. They're very equal at this point. Then a couple weird stuff you mentioned. You make sure to C2 is only there to help out Lelouch when things didn't go well, as opposed to what was Kallen doing exactly. I'm very confused. They are both working towards their own goals. Kallen made sure to work with Zero to help free Japan, and C2 stayed with Lelouch to help him fulfill her Geass contract. Both are working with Lelouch to help fulfill their own needs. What's the difference? I don't even know what you're saying there. It's really bizarre to me. You said that nothing got done when the Black Knights without Kallen. They literally destroyed the Geass Order, and the UFN was created, and they were able to hold off the Chinese Federation forces and even start a rebellion against the High Eunuchs. What are you talking about there? A lot of things haven't followed Kallen. Kallen also doesn't lead any operation. Lelouch does. The only time she was ever the front man, front woman for a battle was Narita because they needed her to start the rock slide, or the landslide. But any other time during the conflict, she's just a normal soldier that he sends to battle. Now, granted, she's part of his elite force, which you do mention in this video, but being a high-valued soldier has nothing to do with leading the operation. That's a very strange take. Like, that's pure headcanon. It's not even headcanon. It's just, I don't even know. That's flat out wrong.
People who have watched Code Geass.
And then you said Lelouch picked Suzaku because he wanted equal to Kallen. That's headcanon. That never once was stated in the story. That happened to work out that way, but he chose to work with Suzaku because he wanted him to take care of Nunnally. And Suzaku said he only would do that if he would change the world through the lies he started. You know, fulfill those lies, become the man you said you were. That's all that was about. Being the guy to fight against Kallen was a nice byproduct, but that wasn't the main motivation. You're missing like so much lore, character development, plot development as well. You mentioned that Kallen gets captured, things stop, Cito lost her memories, and things kept going. They kept going either way. In fact, when Kallen left, or when Kallen was captured, C2 was actually helping out in her place at driving the Akatsuki, and again, she was pretty good as a Nightmare Frame pilot because they were able to fight off the Britannian forces and the Chinese forces and start a rebellion in the Chinese Federation. So no matter how you look at it, this is a completely false understanding of the plot. The last thing I wanted to mention was you said Kallen stopped Lelouch from taking drugs. I don't know why that's not a fair point. If you're going to state earlier that C2 helps out Lelouch when there's bumps in the road, and that's not good enough, then saying Kallen went to stop Lelouch when he had bumps in the road is good enough is a contradiction in your own logic. Either it's all good or none of it's good. And that's my thoughts on that video. There's way more things they got wrong, but those are the ones that stood out to me. Now, before I go into the latest one they released about the best brothers in anime, they made one additional video I wanted to briefly mention, which was the Whis video on CBR's bad takes on Whis' ability, and they mentioned how Zero couldn't use, or Lelouch rather, couldn't use his Geass on Whis. I completely agree with that, but I don't know if that's because you guys understood the plot well enough, or just because Whis is so powerful and super, and he's what, a planet buster, universe buster. He's some crazy scale. Again, I'm not a big super nerd in that respect, so I don't know exactly the abilities he has, but it's much stronger than anything in Geass. So if you had limited knowledge in Code Geass, you can reasonably assume Lelouch would not be able to use his Geass on Whis. So that's a pass on your part, but only because of using your Dragon Ball Super knowledge, not really your Code Geass knowledge. Now that we've gone over the past examples, let's go over the most recent video, which offends me the most because the channel has grown to a point now where it's considered a good source of information. These guys put a lot of effort into it. more research is being done, yet the same problems emerge that happened years ago. Some of the videos I showed here were old in relation to the channel, but this one just came out this week and it still has similar issues of getting things wrong, and that's where my frustrations lie as a fan of this channel who wants it to succeed in the future. So let's get into that video. Here's his take on Lelouch as a brother to Nunnally. He's going to grade his ability. Let's listen to what he has to say and then we'll discuss it afterwards.
Pick Lelouch from Code Geass. Now this one hurts because I'm a big Lelouch fan, but at the end of the day, we have to call a spade a spade. I mean, yes, his motivation was Nunnally. Everything that Lelouch carried out in Code Geass was in the name of Nunnally. But Nunnally didn't know. Similar to Itachi and Sasuke, Nunnally had no idea. Nunnally was getting lied to. Lelouch at one point had to use the Geass on Nunnally. Things like this are happening constantly in Code Geass to a point where Lelouch got everybody in the world to hate him, plus Nunnally to sacrifice himself for the greater good. We know that Itachi's good. We know that Lelouch is good. But their siblings had no idea. Their siblings hated them for the majority of their lives. This is why they are bottom tier brothers. Because their siblings had no idea how great they were until they were no longer present. And
Okay, let's go through those points, okay? The first one he said was Lelouch is constantly lying to Nunnally, and he had to use Geass on her. We'll get to that one at the end. Lelouch made everyone hate him, including Nunnally. Nunnally hated Lelouch for most of their lives. Nunnally never knew about Lelouch's plans until the end. Okay, these points are all wrong. I don't mean like the opinion's not correct or it's a wrong interpretation of plot. These are wrong narratively speaking. None of these are supported in the plot. And that's what pissed me off about this video and their past ones where, again, if your opinion on the matter is different from mine, fine, we can argue that, agree to disagree. But this is just, like, this is wrong narratively speaking. I mean, Lelouch made everyone hate him, including Nunnally. No, she never hated Lelouch. She apologized to him in Lelouch of the Resurrection. And if you don't want to count that film because you don't think it's canon, then you can acknowledge the fact that at the end of the series, Nunnally literally said, "I love you," before he died because she realized what he was doing the whole time. Nunnally didn't hate Lelouch at all during Code Geass. The only time they were anywhere close to that was during the Requiem. Other than that, they were very close. She loved him. She always said, you know, I love Suzaku whenever, but you're always my favorite. She always was close to him, trying to comfort him. She recognized he was having problems in his life. She loved him a lot. There aren't many times where they were at butting heads. You were confusing Itachi with Sasuke with Nunnally and Lelouch, which is a very different relationship. And this happens when you try to be a jack of all trades, you master none of them. If you had just focused on the Code Geass specifically and did some more research on what happened, this wouldn't have even occurred. It is frustrating that as someone who has watched the show many times, as is what I do on my channel, that I could figure this out within seconds. And anyone who watched the show could watch your take and come to the same conclusion. It's frustrating because you're trying to cover so many different topics, but you're not really putting the due diligence in any of them. Even the Naruto one you made previously was also somewhat incorrect, but I'm not going to go into that because I'm not really a Naruto, god, like say Swag Kage, for example, so I can't give my proper take on it because I don't want to sound like an idiot. But you're putting your Code Geass take out there, and unfortunately, while I love your channel and what you guys do, you kind of sound like an idiot, which is frustrating because I love this stuff and I love what you guys do, but this is wrong. You mentioned how Nunnally never knew about Lelouch's plan until after he was dead. No, she knew as he was dying and forgave him at that point. That's a big difference. There was closure on some level. It wasn't enough closure because Nunnally still wanted to talk to Lelouch at the end of Lelouch of the Resurrection, but still there was actually closure there. You're almost implying that when Lelouch died, she found out 3 weeks later. No, she found out at the moment that he was dying, that he did all this for her. And that's a completely different take. Now let's go back to that first one, which I put off to the side there, which was Lelouch is constantly lying to Nunnally and using Geass on her was something he had to do. No, he didn't have to use Geass on Nunnally. He did so because they both agreed. Well, I mean, she didn't know what he wanted to do, but he knew that she wanted to use the Damocles to focus everyone's hatred towards it. Him using Geass on her was the acknowledgement that both wanted the same thing. If Nunnally didn't want that, he would not have used Geass on her. Because if you remember, he says, "Oh, I see, you want the same thing," and then the Geass command happened. The had to is not required. He could have easily wrestled out of her hands if he wanted to. He could have argued with her multiple different ways. So that's not a fair understanding of the plot. Now, the one thing that actually was an opinion was the fact that he hid it from her. However, in CBR-like fashion, and I hate to compare these guys to CBR because these people actually care and love the stuff they're discussing, but you can't just state that without explaining why. Why was hiding it from Nully a bad thing? Why did Lelouch have to tell her what was going on? And the problem, you don't state that, you just go, well, he lied to her. If CBR made a similar point, and again, why are you guys pulling a CBR when you specifically devote much of your channel to attacking CBR, but here you are doing a CBR, which is really frustrating to me because you guys are better than that. You've proven to be better than that. I'm discussing this as a fan, upset at, let's say, at a sports team for not performing at the level they should have. This critique is of someone who cares, not someone who just wants to hate you guys for hating purposes. Now, I'm going to help you guys out with this by stating that the reason maybe Lelouch didn't want to tell Nully about this plan is because she never would have supported it. And the reason why that's the case is because he learned from Euphemia that all Nully ever wanted to do was simply live with Lelouch. That's all she cared about. When they were arguing in the Democles, that same discussion came up. However, here's the counter-argument to that. When Nully brings that up, Lelouch says, okay, and then what? What was the plan then? We live together in hiding forever? What are you gonna do when you leave high school? What am I gonna do when I leave high school? It's never gonna work. We have to destroy the people who are hunting us down, or we're gonna be in hiding for the rest of our lives. And throughout the whole dialogue tree, I say tree because like everyone keeps saying their own lines during that awesome scene, Nully doesn't have a response for that. Instead, she pivots to like, oh, using Geass on people is controlling their lives. But she had no counter-argument to that point because there is none. Lelouch had to do this or they're going to be in hiding for the rest of their lives. So Lelouch understands how Nully feels. He would not be able to reason with her. It's probably better off that he doesn't tell her anything, and once the world's a better place, then maybe tell her then, or maybe never bring it up. It doesn't really matter. The whole point was to make a better world for Nully. Better she doesn't know about the evilness behind his actions. And that is an opinion that I am presenting here based on what topic you brought up here. But you guys don't actually do that. It is the burden of proof for the person presenting an argument to give their reasoning for it. You can't just state, I think X, therefore Y, but like why? You know, why is it that that's how you feel? You don't really do that in this video. I know it's a quick list, you can't go into full detail, but you could at least throw like a quick sentence summary like I just did there about how none ever wanted this. Okay, if you had just said that, we wouldn't even be here at this point. And another thing I wanted to mention about things you were talking about, let's discuss things you didn't talk about when it comes to Lelouch and Nunnally's relationship as siblings. Because prior to the rebellion, Lelouch was taking care of Nunnally through their entire lives. When they were exiled to Japan, he was constantly making sure that the guards watching wouldn't do anything. He made sure that she wouldn't become a pawn for other people, for negotiations, because that's what he thought they were there for. We know later on it was because Charles sent him there to protect him from V2, but Lelouch didn't know that at the time, and given Nunnally's weak state, he constantly did whatever it took to protect her. He even took beatings from other kids when getting food for her. That's in an audio drama, by the way. And there's a picture drama again of him defending her from other people. Now, granted, Suzaku helped out as well, but Lelouch, for the most part, was the only person who took care of Nully during that entire time. And he did that throughout their entire childhood. And even going to Ashford Academy, there's an audio drama where he talks to Millie about how they want to get to school, or if the school be accessible for someone who has wheelchair issues, or handicap, rather. And Lelouch always thought about Nully in this respect. It wasn't just a rebellion, which was the first time he ever considered her feelings and helping her out. It was everything he was doing. You're not properly explaining that. You're just going, well, Requiem, rebellion, hid from Nully, therefore bad. Let's not include anything he did prior to that, because it's not relevant, you know? Taking care of Nully in a foreign country with no friends or allies, yeah, there's nothing special about that, just throw out the window. But lying to her about something that was going to benefit her anyways, and in all respect, she didn't really need to know anyhow, that makes him a bad brother? Terrible take. But again, at least in that respect, that's just an opinion, and we can agree to disagree on that. The other stuff, that's just getting the story wrong. Factually incorrect stuff. Before I wrap up this video, I want to mention why I made it in the first place, because I'm sure some people watching it are wondering, well, if you don't like the video or the opinion, just don't watch it. Who cares? Why even make the rebuttal? It's just they're just having fun. You even said they weren't crapping on Code Geass. They just had some bad takes on it. The reason why I'm making the video is for a number of reasons. Number one, I was very angry with what the Shonen Showdown said, and I wanted to vent because it's therapy. When I get to vent on camera, it makes me feel better. I sleep good the next night. I like a good night's sleep. I'm sure most of you agree with me on that one. So that's one reason. Number two, I want Shonen Showdowns videos to be the best they can be because, again, I view this channel like others as a sports team. I support them. I like the people on the team. I like the content they produced. And I want the best content possible. And that can only come through constructive criticism. And while I've been very harsh in this video, it's only because I care. Not because I hate this channel, I want them to fail. No, I want this to succeed. If you have not subbed to Shonen Showdown, sub to this channel. They make great content. But for Code Geass stuff, it's just god awful. I don't know a better way to put it. So the point of this video is to get them to go in the right direction and make better videos. And the last point I want to make is for the people actually watching the videos, because what often happens is, and I'll use Code Geass as an example, but you can use anything like it, like a fiction story or whatever. If someone makes a video about a particular topic that you know a lot about, and you know a lot of other people know a lot about it, but a lot of people who don't know about the topic are going to watch this video, and that video has wrong information, the people that don't know much about it are going to walk away with a false understanding of that information, and they're going to spread it to other people. So by you making a video that has incorrect information, you are essentially spreading misinformation to other people who will then keep spreading it over and over again to the point where the people who actually like the story, in this case Code Geass, or really anything, are going to fight with those people who got their information from a wrong source, and you get stupid posts on social media sites where people are sharing these terrible takes on whatever you enjoy. In this context, it's Code Geass, but it can really be anything. And if you're probably thinking I'm crazy and that doesn't happen, well, I was on Reddit this week and someone made a post about the Special Administrative Zone of Japan, and the take was based on something I heard from DX's video, and I'm sure the person who made the take watched that video, and I've seen so many posts just like that where the take is based on something that I know is not their own idea and they got it from somewhere else. So the purpose of this video is to be the counter argument, to present that these things are not accurate. And if you watched any of these videos and you said to yourself, wait a minute, that's not correct, this video is for you. This is the rebuttal you were looking for. So I'm making this for the fans who are upset with these takes, and for those who were wondering, is that right or not right? Here's the correct answer. This is not it. No offense to you guys.
At the end of the day, we have to call a spade a spade.
So those are like the reason why I made the video. To end this on a positive note, I will say you guys have good content. You're definitely passionate about anime, and I respect that. I respect what you guys do. But for the love of God, please, 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 if you're going to do any more Code Geass videos down the road, even if it's a list like this and you have to include it, do some damn research before you make the video. If you want to, I mean, this is a very arrogant and selfish thing to say, but if you wanted to ask me personally about my thoughts on your take, I'd be happy to help you out on it if you even watch this video, which, again, you don't have to and you may not. I don't really care. I mean, that's not true. I do care because I want you to watch so you'll get some positive critique and constructive criticism on your work. Either way, you don't have to consult me. That's just one idea. But if you're going to do more Code Geass videos down the road, please do some research. Rewatch the show a couple of times. If you don't understand something, go on Reddit, ask questions on there. I know Reddit's an awful place to be, but you will find nice people on the Code Geass Reddit, just like myself, who will answer your questions if you don't understand an aspect of the story. Don't feel like just because you don't know something, you have to make it up and present your own headcanon, which is the majority of these videos, unfortunately. I did the same mistake when it came to Death Note, and I went to that subreddit and I got a lot of information from it, and it really improved my understanding of Death Note. And it improved it so much that when I watched your discussion of Light vs. Lelouch, you got so many things about Light wrong too, which hurt my head, which demonstrates that I think when it comes to Code Geass and Death Note, you're out of your element. When it comes to Dragon Ball Z and One Piece and Naruto, Black Clover, I don't know, My Hero Academia, you understand those shows a lot, maybe because they're simpler, maybe because you spend more time with them. I don't know what it is, but when it comes to shows like Death Note and Code Geass, you guys are just out of your element, which is fine. I mean, you can't be a master of all things. It's just not possible. But if you are going to do Code Geass in any context like a video, please do some research. I want you guys to make the best videos ever. I appreciate the videos you guys do, and I hope you guys succeed. You're close to 100,000 subscribers. I hope you get there. I really mean that. Anywho, those are my takes on Shonen Showdowns videos. Let me know in the comment section below if you agree with me, disagree with me, what points that I get wrong in the correction. I'd be happy to know, because again, I don't make these videos because I want to hear myself talk. I hate the sound of my voice. I do this because I want to honestly get feedback from the fans. That's why I made this channel from the get-go. If you liked the video, please like it, subscribe, join the Discord server. We need more people, please. I want to get to at least 100 at some point. That'd be kind of cool to have awesome conversation about anime, Code Geass, or anything related. And as I always say, the world is not a dark place, and tomorrow will be a good day. Thanks for watching.